Diablo 4 is now a spin-off version of Diablo 3, Path of Exile, and World of Warcraft. The RNG random number generator game mechanics that made Diablo 2 the greatest game of all time through randomized loot, dungeons, monster spawns, and even skill damage ability gave you a new experience every time you logged on to the game and has given the player base infinite replay value for 20 years. Diablo 4 has now evolved into a repetitive gameplay style that gives you the same experience over and over. That is less rewarding and is for the casual player base and MMORPG based game mechanics. Now, I've been considered one of the most controversial Diablo 2 content creators for my critical opinions and somewhat of an outcast because of them. 98% of Diablo-specific content creators are partnered with Blizzard. This is probably why you have never seen me use the hashtag DiabloPartner. I've always expressed myself to the fullest and never tried to gain the approval of everybody, which is an impossible task when fully being yourself. The game is my love and passion though. I will be as old as Decker King going on a rant about game mechanics and just my overall love for the game. All of my opinions come from a place of love, and I want Diablo to be in the spotlight like it should have been for the past 20 years. So let's talk about how the Diablo 4 game mechanics work. I will explain to you how Diablo 4 has now evolved into a repetitive experience from a Diablo 2 player perspective, explaining the core game mechanics that are important to understand for the long-term success of Diablo 4 or any Diablo game. Diablo's unique gameplay style and replay value is possible through the term RNG, the random number generator. This was the main core revolutionary game mechanic of Diablo 2. This core value has been exiled from the Diablo franchise since the release of Diablo 3 and now abandoned by Diablo 4. Now, you may have asked yourself, what is it? What is it about Diablo 2 that made that game the greatest game of all time? Why did I spend 20 years playing this game and not others? With my studies of quantum physics and my spiritual journey, I realized 95% of our brain's thoughts, beliefs, behaviors, perceptions, and more function like an automatic, unconscious computer program. Your perceptions of the real world and the gaming world are a set of unconscious programs. This theory, along with the misunderstanding of Diablo's core game mechanics, were the real reason why you had these beliefs about Diablo 2 being the greatest game of all time, which I will explain in further detail later on. Chris Wilson, the creator of Path of Exile, studied these theories as well about Diablo 2 when he was creating Path of Exile. Chris knew Diablo 2 was the greatest game of all time, and he studied the game to its core. Every time you log on to Diablo 2, you have a new experience because of the RNG mechanics. Every moment is different. It is impossible to have the same experience you had before every time you log on to the game. When you enter the world, the dungeons are randomized, along with the types of monsters that spawn, the loot that drops, the map layouts, and even your skill damage ability. Now, when you play Diablo 2, as I said, 95% of your perceptions of the world are unconscious. You unconsciously never knew exactly why Diablo 2 was the greatest game of all time, and these core game mechanics pass right by your awareness. This concept of the Diablo world had you constantly addicted to the rush of wanting new experiences. You just never realized it this whole time. The loot being randomized gave you a sense of overwhelming accomplishment when you found something such as a high rune. This extreme rarity combined with the reward of extreme power left the player feeling like they were truly rewarded for their effort. The reason why Diablo 2 players won't like Diablo 4 is because it doesn't have these core game mechanics of the RNG. In Diablo 4, the world is almost always the same with no RNG. The dungeon are the same repetitive experience over and over again. Fetch a key, run to the left, run to the right, and open a door. The monster spawns are somewhat randomized, however, mostly the same. So now let's talk about soulbound items, no trading, and the itemization. So 98% of the item drops are for your class and gives you no sense of accomplishment. This term is called personal loot, the same repetitive experience. This is a spin-off concept from World of Warcraft instance loot, where the loot drops are mostly the same from bosses and become soulbound. This has removed the idea of item drops being unique, special, and rewarding. This is to appeal to the casual players. Also the World of Warcraft player base because it has a massive following, and they like the concept of instance loot. They don't like RNG based item drops. This gets them interested in the game and makes Blizzard more money from a wider audience. Also, the loot drops were increased for the beta. However, I still think Blizzard is going to have legendaries dropping like RAW runes, just to benefit the casual player base. And also for casual players who don't play the game at an end game level. So, soulbound items and no trading. Have you ever heard any player say, "I don't like trading"? I don't want trading in Diablo 4. Never. Let's say you find a Zod rune, the rarest rune in the entire game of Diablo 2 that is for a build like a barbarian, and you found it on a sorceress, so now it has no use to you. If this was Diablo 4, you couldn't trade it. One of the rarest items in the game, and you now have to just salvage it. Even though item drops are class based, what if it's not for your build? Will this happen in Diablo 4? Most likely. This theory isn't absolute because we haven't experienced endgame. So why does Blizzard want no trading when 98% of the Diablo community wants trading? There are many theories to this. One is Blizzard thinks this will fix real money trading. However, there will always be real money trading when trading is available in any kind of form. There's no fixed RMT unless the game is completely solo self-found. Blizzard wants you to actually find the items yourself to complete your character. In other words, they just want you to be solo self-found. This restricts the player from having the freedom to make their own choices. Instead, they should just have a self-found league like Path of Exile. They're literally forcing the player base to be solo self-found. Another theory is they are trying to appeal to a wider audience of players, which is probably World of Warcraft, where soulbound items are the pathway to endgame gear completion. The next theory is they personally think this is the best for the game and its future, regardless of community feedback. And the last theory is they think Diablo 3 was a success based on sales of 30 million copies without trading. However, when Diablo 3 was released, everyone hated the game and it died. The game had 200 Twitch viewers for years. The game was completely lifeless while Diablo 2 had 40,000 players online in 2016. And for some reason, Blizzard still seems to think that the game was a success. Diablo in the franchise is like the Beatles. It doesn't matter if the album or if the music or if the game is even good at all, it's going to sell millions of copies just because of the hype around the name. So let's talk about the constant restrictions of gameplay. Diablo 4 is advertised as an open world game. The world makes you feel restricted on the places you can go because there are barriers everywhere. The dungeons are usually one pathway and it literally makes you feel trapped in the world. Diablo 2 was 10 times more open world than this, and I'm not sure why Blizzard has designed the world this way when it was supposed to be open world. There are many aspects of the game that restrict you from where you really want to go and things you want to do. You can't go wherever you want because of the barriers in the open world, and you can't trade all of the items either, and aspects can only be applied to certain items. You constantly have to salvage, enchant items, extract legendaries, etc. There's always something restricting you from progressing, when instead you should just be out in the world killing stuff, not crafting constantly in the main city like World of Warcraft. These features should be choices, not requirements. And this is where Diablo 2 got something almost perfect, because there was crafting and there were ways to enchant your items and do other different types of crafting and enchanting abilities. It's just you didn't absolutely have to do it to be able to progress your character in the game. When you're completing the Diablo 4 story and questing, you can skip the cutscenes. However, you still spend hours of time hitting your escape key to skip the cutscenes. Every side quest has the same boring scene. Also, every quest is a lot of walking and a lot of talking to NPCs. I don't know how many times I had to walk all the way across the map for so many quests, when I could just be out there killing stuff. It feels like they are trying to make the game an open world type atmosphere similar to World of Warcraft with a action RPG spin-off that has a ton of restrictions. Rune words are not completed for the release of the game. They were a feature Blizzard announced to try to get Diablo 2 players into Diablo 4. This is basically the same thing as socketing an item with a jewel or a perfect gem. They are not rune words. You just get different effects based on the rune. The feature isn't completed, and I'm sure Blizzard will use this in an upcoming patch to gain hype. I don't think they understand the complex game mechanics for rune words because this requires a lot of testing and knowledge to be balanced properly. And most of the devs at Blizzard that work on Diablo games, I don't think they know anything about Diablo 2. And I also never see them ever playing the game. It just seems like they have a job and working at Blizzard is really cool, so they just like to be at Blizzard for the clout and the hype. I never seen one Blizzard employee actually play the game, so I assume they don't have much knowledge or passion Diablo game mechanics that come from the other games such as Diablo 2. This is probably why they copy and paste Diablo 3 because they don't actually understand Diablo at all. This is why the skill tree is like Path of Exile and the rest of the game is just like World of Warcraft with a spin-off. It doesn't seem like PvP is going to be completed for the release. This is impossible to balance with the current version of the game because my chain lightning does more damage than my actual health. If Blizzard wanted, they could balance PvP and get the game on an esports level of popularity. I just don't think they care enough for the game as much as they do World of Warcraft. I fear we won't see many major content patches because after 2 years they will make the majority of the money that there is to make from Diablo 4. I don't see Blizzard making enough money off cosmetics, battle passes for them to actually care for the game as much as they care for World of Warcraft. Maybe if the game was a subscription-based game, it's just over time they won't make enough money from the game anymore. So I don't really see them continuing to develop more features and more of the endgame in the future. Also, there seems to be what I call a culture flip or a new age of Diablo players that actually like Diablo 3 and even Diablo 4 game mechanics. After the release of Diablo 3, everyone hated the game, even before it was released. Also, the game died while Diablo 2, as I said, had 40,000 players online. I will say I love Diablo 4, and so far it is a wonderful game. However, everything that made the franchise unique compared to other games has been dismissed for years. And this is why there's an outrage from Diablo 2 players. All we wanted was a new game that was similar to Diablo 2 and its core game mechanics, such as rune words and endgame. It's surprising to me that this new age of Diablo players tell us to go play Diablo 2 if we like it so much, and tell us we're on some kind of nostalgia trip, when everyone hated Diablo 3 to begin with. So I guess it's just a new age for Diablo.